should have its leadership position continue in that new financial system. And I'm very, very happy to see people like David Sachs, Secretary Bessent, Secretary Lutnick taking this very seriously with their time, and very grateful to them too. So I'm just overjoyed to see this, and I think it is a big part of how the U.S. can continue its role in the global financial system. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Right.
I thought it was very important that we stay in the front of this one. This is a big one. And as you know, China is pushing forward and very strongly as usual. But we're way in the lead, as we are in AI and other things, and we want to stay there. So I thought this was very important, and we have some brilliant people sitting around this table, and it's an honor to have you involved. But we want to stay at the forefront of everything. And this is a very important day in your lives. I know you worked, some of you, very long before people really understood what was happening. And so I congratulate you. But this is a big day. Being in the White House is a big deal. And you have great support. Thank you all very much. Thank you very much. Thank you, please. Thank you very much. Thank you, media. Thank you. Please. It's a wonderful place, the White House. I want to begin. Is Johnny here from World Cup? I want to thank you for this election. And they just had a presentation in the Oval Office, and I thought this was such a beautiful, this is the trophy. This is a big deal. The World Cup is the biggest sporting event, and Johnny Infantino is my friend for a long time, and during my first term, we worked out a deal to get the World Cup, and then because of lots of interesting things that happened, I ended up being president when it showed up. I was always disappointed. I wasn't going to make it. I was going to serve 8 straight. Instead, we did it the hard way, but maybe the more important way. So I will be with you as president, Johnny. So maybe you could just say a few words and show how beautiful the World Cup trophy is. Thank you. Yeah, sure, please. Yeah.
The famous key.
That's a great key.
You want to open it, President? Or shall
Well, you go ahead.
I go ahead?
I trust you.
So this is the new trophy of a new competition. It's called the FIFA Club World Cup. The 32 best clubs in the world with the absolutely best players in the world. And for the first time in history, this competition takes place in the United States. Opening game on the 14th of June.
Right.
Obviously in Miami. Final on the 30th of July this year in New York, New Jersey. But it's not that. The trophy is special because it has a key, and because, as you can see, if I manage to do that, yes, it's a bit tricky. It's not that. So this is a trophy. It is a trophy which represents, and that's why I think it's interesting to show this trophy exactly in this forum, because it represents the past, but it's also projected to the future. There is no other sports trophy which looks like that. It has engraved the history of the game, of soccer or football as we call it, the participating teams of the first edition, the stadiums, beautiful stadiums in 11 cities in the United States of America where this competition will take place. So at the same time, past, present, and projected to the future. And if I may, President, say another 2 words, and then I let you work. I would like to congratulate the President and the administration for not only for the World Cup, the Club World Cup, the World Cup, and the great work done, but also for this initiative that you are speaking about here. If I may add something in this respect, I'm not an expert at all, but FIFA, as you know, is a brand which is globally known, a very strong brand. The soccer economy in the world is worth around 270 billion a year. 70% of that, Mr. President, is in Europe. So imagine the potential that there is around the world, only in soccer, if we develop it. And so FIFA is very, very interested under my presidency to develop a FIFA coin, to do it from here, from America, and to conquer the 5 billion soccer fans in the world. So if there is anyone here who is interested to team up with FIFA, here we are, together with the United States of America, and we will conquer the world of soccer with the FIFA coin. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That coin, that's that coin may be worth more than FIFA in the end. It could be quite a coin, actually. Huh? Anyway, thank you, Johnny. Great job. I just thought you should see this trophy because it's really, it's the biggest sporting event in the world, and we have it here. And we appreciate being selected. Thank you very much, Johnny. You do a fantastic job. And welcome to the first ever White House Digital Assets Summit. I know that many of you have been fighting for years for this, and it's an honor to be with you at the White House. I want to thank the White House AI and crypto czar David Sachs, Treasury Secretary. This is David right here, in case you don't know. You know David. And a man who's doing a great job as Secretary of Treasury, Scott Bessent, who's right here. Scott, thank you very much. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, wherever you may be, Howard. Hi, Howard. He's doing some interesting work right now with all that's going on. He's right in the middle of it and doing a great job. Thank you. SBA Administrator Kelly Loeffler. And hi, Kel. SEC Commissioner Hester Pierce. Thank you, Hester. Acting CFTC Chairman Caroline Pham. House Majority Whip Tom Emmer. Hello, Tom. Representative Brian Stile. Thank you. Brian, thank you very much. Digital Assets Council Director Bo Hines. Good, Bo. Great job. And many other distinguished guests. We have a lot of very distinguished people around the table. Some of them will be speaking. I want to thank Marco Rubio also, who's right over there. And we have tremendous people very interested in this subject. And last year I promised to make America the Bitcoin superpower of the world and the crypto capital of the planet. And we're taking historic action to deliver on that promise, as you know, around the table. Yesterday, I signed an executive order officially creating our strategic Bitcoin reserve, and this will be a virtual Fort Knox for digital gold to be housed within the United States Treasury. That's a big thing, Scott. The federal government is already among the largest holders of Bitcoin, as you know, really one of the largest holders in the world, with as many as 200,000 Bitcoin obtained via civil law and various other forms of law, and including enforcement actions. These existing holdings will form the foundation of the new reserve. Unfortunately, in recent years, the U.S. government has foolishly sold tens of thousands of additional Bitcoin that were worth billions and billions of dollars had they not sold them, but they did sell them, mostly during the Biden administration. Not a good thing to have done. From this day on, America will follow the rule that every Bitcoin knows very well: never sell your Bitcoin. That's a little phrase that they have. I don't know if that's right or not. Who the hell knows, right? Who knows? Who knows? But so far, it's been right. And well, let's keep it that way. The Treasury and Commerce Departments will also explore new pathways to accumulate additional Bitcoin holdings for the reserve, provided it's done at no cost to the taxpayers. We don't want any cost to the taxpayers. In addition, my order directs federal agencies to conduct an inventory of all crypto assets currently held by the U.S. government and determine how they can be transferred easily to the Treasury. Non-Bitcoin digital assets will be held in a new U.S. digital asset stockpile where they will be managed properly. My administration also is working to end the federal bureaucracy's war on crypto, which was really going on pretty wildly during Biden until the election came about. About 5 months before the election, he became a big fan because he heard how many people were in favor of it and how many people love it and respect it. But I guess it didn't work out too well for him. People understood what was going on and paved the way for groundbreaking innovations in institutional finance. Under the Bitcoin administration, regulators strong-armed banks. I mean, they really did. They strong-armed banks into closing the accounts of crypto businesses and entrepreneurs, effectively blocking some money transfers to and from exchanges, and they weaponized government against the entire industry. But I know that feeling also. Maybe better than you do. All of that will soon be over, and we are ending Operation Choke Point 2.0. Now, some people really suffered. It was ridiculous what they were doing, but in the end, they came around, but they came around for the wrong reasons. They came around only because they wanted votes, and they saw that tens of millions of people were against them because of what they were doing. I also want to express my strong support for the efforts of lawmakers in Congress as they work on bills to provide regulatory certainty for dollar-backed stablecoins and the digital assets market. They're working very hard on that. This is a tremendous opportunity for economic growth and innovation in our financial sector, and will really go a long way. I think it's going to be a tremendous, we feel like pioneers in a way, of tremendous method of growth. And things are very much tied, and we want to keep it that way, the U.S. dollar. Long into the future, we're going to keep it that way. I hope lawmakers will send that legislation to my desk before August recess if they can. And they're very much working with you, and you know a lot of them, and a lot of them were committed right from the very beginning. So I just want to congratulate you all for being at the White House today, and a man who knows more about Bitcoin and AI and just about everything else than anybody, David Saxon. I'd like to have you say a few words, David.
Thank you, Mr. President. We're all here today because of your leadership, your vision, and your generosity, and I really want to thank you for that. We're also here because of your desire to make America great and to introduce a golden age in America, including for digital assets. And we're here because of your love of innovators, or as you might say, high IQ people. Yeah, we know you love high IQ people. And we have about 30 of them here in the room today. These are the top people in the digital asset industry. And one other thing that I think that you love is legal fairness. This is an industry that was subjected to prosecution and persecution for the last 4 years, horrible lawfare, and nobody knows what that feels like better than you do. So we really appreciate the fact that you understand legal fairness and that you're always willing to fight for the right thing, for legal fairness. You never back down. You stand defiant, even in the face of an assassin's bullet. It's an inspiration to everyone in this room, I think. So it's an honor.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I just want to say it's an honor to work for you. It's an honor to work for a president who works every day to get so much done on behalf of the American people. Your administration is moving at tech speed. It's really amazing. It's actually faster than any startup that I've been part of. Is that your administration moves even faster. So I just want to say thank you for having me be a part of it. I've enjoyed every minute of it. I love working for you, and thank you again for this opportunity.
Thank you, David, very much. Appreciate it.
And now I just want to pass the ball to Secretary Besson.
Scott?
Good. David, so today, when President Trump has signed the executive order to establish the strategic Bitcoin reserve and stockpile, we're going to position the United States as a leader among nations in the digital asset strategy. It's important for the United States to recognize this fact and get ahead of the other nations in the digital age. We applaud the President's direction to use the digital assets already in possession of the nation, and we are going to establish this Bitcoin reserve, We will use this authority to augment the asset side of the United States balance sheet. As I've said many times, President Trump is creating assets for the American people while most past presidents have created debt, and a large part of this asset program can be in digital assets. We are going to end the regulatory weaponization against digital assets. The Biden administration's actions did nothing other than punish innovators, and that all of you have made it here today is really a testament to your fortitude. Much of Treasury's responsibility in this order relates to the tax code and determinations around risk weightings, and I'm here to assure you that we are going to work with the Comptroller of the Currency, the IRS, and we're going to rescind and amend all applicable previous guidance. And we are going to put a lot of thought into the stablecoin regime, and as President Trump has directed, we are going to keep the U.S. the dominant reserve currency in the world, and we will use stablecoins to do that. Thank you.
Technology is at the foundation of the Trump presidency. He understands technology, he embraces technology, and he's going to use technology to drive America forward. The blockchain and Bitcoin technology are a key part of that thinking, and embracing that, and here today shows how much a leader the Trump administration and our president is. He understands it, he embraces it. As you said, you're a pioneer in this place, and this is where we're going. We're using the blockchain, we're using Bitcoin, we're going to use digital assets to pound forward, and Donald Trump is leading the way. Can't be more proud of you today.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Howard. Kelly, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is truly a historic day, and as a crypto founder, I couldn't be more proud to be part of your administration. You're moving at the speed of tech for sure, and I will just say it's a great day to have the war on not just crypto, but the war on innovation done. And under your administration, we are truly going to enter into the golden age. And I'll just say, as the administrator of the SBA, small business is a tremendous network that crypto can be deployed against, and so the SBA is open to crypto. So I look forward to working with all of the leaders in this room to advance your efforts here. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you very much. For decades by nearly every country on earth, and we will not let that happen any longer. Much has been said over the last 3 months about Mexico and Canada.
Fox News contributor and former State Department spokesperson under President Obama. And look who it is for the very first time on the couch, House Speaker Mike Johnson. So good to have you here, Speaker Johnson.
So good to be with you. I've been wanting to do this for a long time, so thanks for the opportunity, ladies.
We've been wanting to have you, and we are quite excited. You know, I woke up this morning and I'm reading and, all the congressional publications, Politico, Punchbowl, Axios. Here's what they said happened last night. I was very intrigued by it. This is after the censure of Al Green. You have Politico Playbook citing Axios that says there was a very unhappy House Democratic leadership meeting. They had a come to Jesus meeting with a dozen House lawmakers. Punchbowl, elucidating on that, said that this included Maxwell Frost, Jasmine Crockett, two very outspoken Democrats, and they used the word that they were berated for their behavior. How ordinary is it for leadership to berate members of their own party? And were you surprised by this?
I wasn't surprised. It is extraordinary, but they did make fools of themselves on the House floor. And everyone saw it, everyone in the country. It was a reminder to them why we won so decisively in this last election cycle and why they lost. And they're really a party in total disarray, as you see it on vivid display right now. They don't have an identified leader. They don't have any vision for where they're going. They don't have a platform that they can run on because it was repudiated overwhelmingly in the election. So they're sort of flailing about, and it blew up on the House floor, and I think they deeply regret it. At least some of them do. Others apparently didn't get the message of the election.
No, Al Green among them. He becomes the fourth House Democrat to be censured in the last 4 years. And Hakeem Jeffries, your counterpart on the other side of the aisle, had this to say about the censure.
The censure resolution put forth by extreme MAGA Republicans is not worth the paper that it was written on.
He says it's not worth the paper, and House Freedom Caucus members are asking to put forward a resolution to remove Al Green from his committee assignments. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, the interesting thing is he was censured for disrupting the proceedings of the House. And while I was reading the censure that was voted in, by the way, by 10 House Democrats who joined Republicans in that, they disrupted the proceedings of the House. So there's some irony there. We have to keep decorum. We have to keep control of the proceedings because we're the greatest deliberative body in the world, and we need to act like it. And I think this went way over the line. By the way, these censures, this is not a normal thing. I mean, he was only the 29th member of the House to be censured in the entire history of the U.S. Congress. So it was above the pale. He's the first person to ever be removed from the floor during a presidential address. It was appropriate, and we've got to maintain control.
Emily's going to hop in here, but just a quick follow-up. What about his committee assignments? Do you think that's on the table?
Well, I talked to Freedom Caucus members and other Republicans who are deeply concerned about this. They say we have to restore control one way or the other, and they need to be real consequences, and it's something we'll be looking at early next week.
Okay.
So, Mr. Speaker, it seems that there are some reasonable heads prevailing, right? We have Michigan State Senator Mallory McMorrow. She says, look, these Democrats are sick and tired of performative nonsense. We don't want to see our elected officials trying to be cute or clever, she says. So back to Tuesday night. Peggy Noonan, Democrat, esteemed WSJ opinion editor, wrote a thoughtful op-ed today where she said, look, I came to 3 conclusions after Tuesday. She said they're not serious people talking about her own party, these elected officials who refused to stand up, who refused to clap. 2, their job was to show they are an alternative to Mr. Trump, and instead they proved why he won. And then her third and most important, she said, they will continue to lose for a long time. And she talked about how to stand and cheer, to show support for these incredible Americans that were there that evening was to show love. And instead, she said, they brought the hate. So my question, to quote the Black Eyed Peas, which I got to see in concert 100 years ago, where is the love, Speaker? And do you think that Democrats will listen to these reasonable voices?
I think most of them won't. And you saw that by their vote. They voted against censuring Al Green. They're doubling down, tripling down on their failed policies and their message, and it does not resonate with the people. Peggy Noonan used to be a speechwriter for Ronald Reagan. I mean, she's a pretty keen observer of politics and human nature, and what she's seen here is a trend that no one can deny, that the Democratic Party has left the American people. When I was a kid, I grew up in Louisiana, in the Deep South. There weren't many Republicans. I didn't know many, but that party left the people of my state and every other state over the years, and now they went through that woke progressive nonsense. They went so vigorous and aggressive. It's almost like the pendulum swung all the way to the left and it clicked, and now it's sort of moving back. And what President Trump represents, and our party by extension now, is a force that is moving that pendulum back to what President Trump says is common sense. And that was long overdue. And the people embrace it, and the polls verify that they're in favor of what we're doing, restoring common sense and our conservative principles, which I know.
Fox News contributor and former State Department spokesperson under President Obama. And look who it is for the very first time on the couch, House Speaker Mike Johnson. So good to have you here, Speaker Johnson.
So good to be with you. I've been wondering.
Thank you, Jeff. Stories like Jeff's remind us that tariffs are not just about protecting American jobs. They're about protecting the soul of our country. Tariffs are about making America rich again and making America great again, and it's happening, and it will happen rather quickly. There'll be a little disturbance, but we're okay with that. It won't be much. No, you're not. Oh. And look where Biden.
that the large-scale federal government layoffs will weaken the labor market. How concerned are you?
The large-scale fentanyl what?
The federal government layoffs will impact the labor market, will weaken the labor market.
Oh.
1,000 new jobs last month, the first full month of President Trump's second term. The numbers came in just shy of expectations and largely do not account for recent government layoffs and buyouts. The president touted the numbers earlier today, even as members of his economic team acknowledged more volatility could be on the way, with the administration looking to fire more government workers and slash spending.
How concerned are you that the large-scale federal government layoffs will weaken the labor market? How concerned are you?
The large-scale fentanyl what?
The federal government layoffs will impact the labor market, will weaken the labor market.
Oh. No, I think the labor market's going to be fantastic, but it's going to have high-paying manufacturing jobs as opposed to government jobs. We had too many people in government. You can't just do that. We had many too many. This is for 40 years. You know, this isn't just now. This built up and got worse and worse, and they just hire more and more people.
Now, those comments coming after a wild week that included the president on Tuesday imposing sweeping tariffs on imports from Canada, Mexico, and China. One day later, the president then announced a 1-month exemption from his tariffs for U.S. automakers. And then one day after that, announcing a 1-month exemption on some additional imports from Canada and Mexico before warning of new tariffs on Canada today. Here's the president being pressed in the Oval Office today by my colleague Peter Alexander about the impact of all of that uncertainty.
Creating a space you're proud of with Roman.
Expectations, how long should Americans expect things to cost a bit more?
Well, so far, Peter, there hasn't been very much because these numbers are coming out. We're here for just a little over 4 weeks. And these are fantastic numbers. I was watching some of the reports this morning. They were surprised. There could be some disturbance, a little bit of a disturbance.
The president also defended the confusion caused by his decisions during a new interview with Fox News' Maria Bartiromo.
I think CEOs want to see predictability. They say, look, I have to speak with shareholders. I've got to make plans for CapEx spending. I can't if it's 20% one day and then it's off for a month and it's 25%.
Yeah.
So can you give us a sense of whether or not we are going to get clarity for the business community?
Well, I think so. But, you know, the tariffs could go up as time goes by, and they may go up. And, you know, I don't know if it's predictability. I think
so that's not clarity.
No, I think that they say that. You know, it sounds good to say. But for years, the globalists, the big globalists, have been ripping off the United States. They've been taking money away from the United States. And all we're doing is getting some of it back.
And the uncertainty of this moment stretches well beyond America's borders. The news of the tariffs first being enacted on Tuesday prompted Canada's prime minister to issue a dire warning to his country that the U.S. was trying to weaken its economy to make it easier to annex their territory. Joining me now is NBC News White House correspondent Aaron Gilchrist, NBC News business and data correspondent Brian Chung, and NBC News senior White House correspondent Garrett Hake, who is live for us in Toronto. Thank you all for being here this afternoon. Aaron, let me start with you. What have you learned from the president and the White House today about this back and forth over tariffs?
Well, I think the back and forth is going to continue in some ways, Kristen. We thought maybe we would get a little bit of clarity from the president today, and I think things didn't get clearer, perhaps a bit muddier. We heard the president reference today in his remarks about these tariffs that there could be potentially more tariffs on Canada in particular as it relates to lumber and dairy products. He suggested that the current policy around those items are hurting U.S. dairy farmers and that he would want to see more parity with the Canadians as it relates to those particular items. And this is, you know, I think, as you talked about, we've been going back and forth, at least for the past week, really for the last several weeks, about tariffs being being on and then off and then on again and maybe reduced a little bit in some places. We saw that happen for automakers, a delay in tariffs on products that were important to them. And then again, yesterday, we learned more about the idea that products, goods and services that were under the USMCA would not experience these tariffs for about a month, when we know reciprocal tariffs are supposed to go into effect around the globe. And so those things, as you noted in your lead up to that bit of the interview with Maria Bartiromo, are really things that are still creating and leading to and furthering the instability and the uncertainty about how things are going to settle. We heard the Canadian Prime Minister, Kristen, say that he expects that the trade war is going to continue for the foreseeable future. And so that, I think, tells us something about what to expect going forward, that while there may be spaces where some of these things are pulled back, at least temporarily, the expectation is, at least for the Canadians, that they're going to continue to see some degree of back and forth for some time to come.
I think you're absolutely right, particularly with the president signaling that in October he could impose reciprocal, or in April, rather, the president could impose reciprocal tariffs. The market on track for its worst week since September. How is the president reacting to this slide? Is he, are administration officials getting jittery at all?
Well, no. To be blunt about it, the president said that he's not watching the stock market as he's making these decisions, these economic decisions that he wants to be making, that he has been making over the last several days. We know that the other members of his administration who've been out doing interviews and talking about the current situation have indicated that their concerns, they don't seem to be particularly concerned about the movement that we've been seeing in the stock market today. They feel as though the economic policies and ideas that President Trump is putting forward, they take sort of the long view on these things, and their belief is that in the long term, things will be better. They express that they understand there's some discomfort that people are anticipating in the short term, and that there may be an increase in prices on certain goods and services in the short term. Their belief, though, is that in the long term, it will benefit the American economy and lead to greater wealth for folks in this country. And I think, Brian can maybe get into it a little bit more, but there are businesses, large businesses in this country that are fearful about the idea that prices go up, people are less likely to spend money, and that's going to hurt businesses as well, Kristen.
You're absolutely right. And the CEO's warning they will have to increase prices. Aaron Gilchrist outside of the White House for us. Thank you so much. Appreciate it, Aaron. Brian, let me with that go to you. I think the word of the week is uncertainty, right? What did all of this uncertainty mean for Wall Street, for Main Street, and what are you watching moving forward?
Yeah, well, I think, it's unequivocally a fact that we are more uncertain here on this Friday than we were going into this week on Monday. And that's because on Monday, when the tariffs weren't in effect, by the way, we were worrying about what the impact of these 25% tariffs would be. We got the tariffs, and then we got a pare back in those tariffs for one sector. And then it was kind of broadened out to other sectors as well. Again, those that are compliant under the USMCA, which the Trump administration negotiated in the first term. But if you're a business, you're going, OK, well, even if I am exempt right now, you only get 4 weeks of that exemption. So we're just going to have this conversation all over again the first week of April. If you're a business that's trying to plan around that, you have no more certainty now than you did in the beginning of this week, Kristen.
And of course, we see the board behind you. Jobs, jobs, jobs. We got the jobs report. It was lower than expectations. What did we learn, and what are the potential implications of that, Brian?
Yeah, and a few caveats to these numbers. It is the first report that reflects anything that we've seen from the Trump administration because of the survey period. It was the middle of February. The report prior to that covered the period prior to inauguration. But there wasn't really anything from this that tells us about the substantial impact of either the tariffs or necessarily the DOGE cuts. I'll explain that in a second. But first, the unemployment rate at 4.1% for the month of February. That's basically around the same as what it was in the final months of the Biden administration. So not too much to be read from that front. But as you mentioned, that headline number, 151,000 jobs added in the month of February. That was below the 170,000 that economists had been expecting for that month. But if you kind of look at the average over the 12 months prior, that's kind of in line with that pace that we had seen anyway. So it's basically in line with, again, what we've been seeing. Now, of course, when we talk about the changes by industry, what is interesting, and I'll get to the federal government bit in a second, I imagine we'll want to talk about that. Healthcare was the major driver of job gains, Kristen, adding over 50,000. Manufacturing marginally higher as well, but leisure and hospitality, this was driving a lot of the post-pandemic recovery, actually contracting. That's the third month in a row that's been the case for that industry.
That, and you look at that federal government unemployment number as well. Obviously, that's a big one. Talk about how the Doge layoffs, which again were not factored into this report, what that could mean about next month's job report and the one after that.
Yeah, and it likely wasn't part of this because the Doge cuts were really ramping up in the latter parts, the middle of February, which was probably after the survey period when these numbers were gathered. But nonetheless, we did see 10,000 in terms of a contraction in federal government employment. Again, maybe not too much to be read of that with regards to Doge. But as we look towards the next month, again, maybe that next March jobs report, which we'll get in about 4 weeks, will reflect that. Again, what the White House has said, is that 75,000 federal workers accepted that fork in the road offer. As a fraction of the amount of federal employees that are out there, though, I just want to baseline here. There are 3 million federal employees. So this is just a fraction of that, really just kind of small beans there. But then lastly, as a portion of the overall U.S. workforce, federal employees only make up 1.5%. So we're talking about a fraction of a much larger number. Important context as we think about those Doge cuts in the next jobs report.
Brian Chung, you have been with us throughout the week. Tells you just how much news there has been on the economy. Thank you so much. Appreciate it very much. Garrett, I want to turn to you. You spoke to Ontario Premier Doug Ford about these tariffs. He was very upset about them when we spoke to him on Monday. The prospects of the tariffs, what did he tell you today?
Well, Kristen, he's still fired up today. Doug Ford thinks that this is essentially Donald Trump trying to destroy the Canadian economy. And he feels like it's a 5-alarm fire that needs a response from Canada. And they're kind of getting it across the country. There's a federal government response here. There's a provincial government response. And there's a response of everyday Canadians who we've been talking to all day, who are really having a rally around the flag kind of moment. Patriotism is up. The Buy Canadian movement is at the front of people's minds. And Ford is digging in and expecting this to go on for quite some time.
What do you know, Garrett, about President Trump's interactions with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau? We know that they've had some pretty heated phone calls.
Yeah, that's right. And Ford told me he spoke to Trudeau immediately after that phone call, and that Trudeau described the language as colorful. Kristen, we both know this is a president who favors 4-letter words from time to time. I think it's a pretty fair assumption some were deployed here in a relationship between Trump and Trudeau that has really fallen apart in this second Trump term. It wasn't great in the first. It's quite terrible now, but Trudeau's only going to be in office for a few more days. And I think it's the hope of certainly Premier Ford and some of the Canadians that we talked to today that whoever the next prime minister is here in Canada, and it's still a bit of an open question after Trudeau's party has recovered as he's been on the way out the door, what party that, this next PM will be in, that whoever it is will be able to forge a new personal relationship with Donald Trump. As we've talked about so many times, Trump views all diplomacy as personal, one-on-one between him and foreign leaders. Almost any different Canadian leader will get some degree of a fresh start with Trump, and that might be important to improving the brewing trade war that's happening here.
Yeah, it's a really great point. Let's talk about another point of tension between President Trump and Prime Minister Trudeau, which is this talk of making Canada a 51st state. He, of course, floated this to the Prime Minister when they were having dinner at Mar-a-Lago. Everyone kind of brushed it off, but it's been clear in the weeks and months since that President Trump seems to be somewhat serious about it. What are Canadians, what are the folks telling you about whether or not they're taking this seriously?
Yeah, the Canadians I talked to say to them this started as a joke and something that they could kind of laugh off. Then it became nationalist sentiment here in Canada. Folks are furious. They're really dug in on this idea that they're nobody's 51st states. They are Canadian. There's a new ad on social media that's gone a bit viral here that's a callback to an old Molson beer ad from like 20 years ago. But it has this Canadian, I won't do this justice in describing it, but I'll post it on X for people who are curious. This guy basically standing up for Canadian patriotism, listing all the things that make Canada Canada and arguing that it's not just some imaginary line drawn between two countries. It's a real line, a real border, a real cultural difference, and they're not going to be anybody's 51st state. They're going to stay Canadian. Canadian. That's been a universal sentiment from everyone I've talked to on the ground here in Toronto.
Well, we will look to your X account for that. Garrett Hake, thank you. Great reporting, great interview. Really appreciate it. Thanks so much for bringing it to us. Joining me now is Betsy Stevenson, who served on President Obama's Council of Economic Advisors and was chief economist at the Labor Department. She's now a professor of economics at the University of Michigan's Ford School of Public Policy. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Book a vacation rental